Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Winfree, and what you're about to listen to is an old episode of a podcast I used to host called Everyone Loves a Bad Guy. This particular episode originally aired August 7th, 2013, and features myself and Samer Kadi, who I don't know how many of you might know who that gentleman was. He was a longtime columnist and podcast member over at 411mania.com in the MMA zone. He has since moved on to other things with his life. But he was kind enough to be on this particular episode, and we talked about animals as villains, which is a fairly interesting concept. So we talked about things like Jaws, Cujo, uh, just animals being used as the oppositional force to our heroes' stories. Because I find that still a endlessly interesting way of kind of going about telling a story in that particular respect. Uh, anyway, thank you very much for liking the product, giving us a comment, a subscription, a star review, a written review, a star rating, whatever it happens to be. Whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on, interacting with it a little bit is a giant help to us overall, so thank you very much for that. Also, let me get the sponsors out of the way so we can get on to back to myself in the past, I suppose. First up, let's talk Grammarly. For you listeners of the W2M network, Grammarly is giving a free download of the Grammarly software. Grammarly's AI-powered products help people communicate more effectively. Grammarly helps you write mistake-free on Gmail, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and nearly anywhere else you write on the web. Grammarly corrects hundreds of grammar, punctuation, and spelling mistakes while also catching contextual errors, improving your vocabulary, and suggesting style improvements. To download Grammarly today, go to getgrammarly.com/W2Mnetwork. Again, that's getgrammarly.com/W2Mnetwork to download Grammarly for free. There's also a link in the description below if you don't want to type that into your internet browser of choice. Also sponsoring this particular episode, Amazon Music. If you like songs, and who doesn't, we are giving away a free 30 days of the Amazon Music Unlimited service. This will give you access to Amazon Music's full catalog of more than 70 million songs, and you can listen to those, again, on us. You will get 30 days of that for free, no muss, no fuss. Click the link below, get amazonmusic.com/W2Mnetwork, and you can begin enjoying that and all of these services offered over at amazonmusic.com for free, 30 days. After that, if you like the service and you think it's worth whatever they charge you for it, you're welcome to keep it. If not, you got 30 days of great music for free. Absolutely no risk to you whatsoever. So on that note, let me throw it back to 2013, one of my earlier episodes of this show. Man, I have some fond memories of this program, if you can't tell. Some not so fond, but some fond. So past me, take it away.
When the devil is too busy and death's a bit too much, they call on me by name, you see, for my special touch. To the gentlemen, I'm misfortune. To the ladies, I'm surprise. But call me by any name, anyway, it's all the same. I'm the fly in your suit, I'm the pebble in your shoe, I'm the bee beneath your bed, I'm the bump on every head, I'm the heel on which you slip, I'm the pin in every head, I'm the thorn in your side, makes you wiggle and ride. And it's so easy when you're evil. This is the life you see, the devil tips his hat to me. I do it all because I'm evil, and I do it all for free. Your tears are all the pay I'll ever need.
Yes, after a brief hiccup that was the intro to The Shield, if any of you are professional wrestling fans. We are here. This is Everyone Loves a Bad Guy. I am your host, Robert Winfree. Thank you for joining us. We took a hiatus last week because I got to help my dad move, which is
Moving sucks. Let's just leave it at that. Love my dad. Always happy to help. I hate moving. So, coincidentally, anybody out there listening, if you know someone who's moving, offer to help. It sucks exponentially less if there's more people. So please, we all know it sucks. Many hands make light work. That's a phrase stuck around for a reason. This week, we're back, and that happens to coincide with one of my favorite times of year, Shark Week on the Discovery Channel. Who doesn't love sharks? And in honor of that, we are talking not just about sharks, although predominantly about them. We also want to talk this week about all kinds of animals that can be construed as evil or have been, either in real life or books, movies, games, television, all kinds of fun stuff like that, because they can be everywhere, and sharks specifically tend to evoke a lot of fear because, let's face it, they can be scary if you're unprepared or if they're in a bad mood. I have a special guest at this time. He has not been on this show before. He used to be a regular on the 411 Ground and Pound MMA show that emanates from the same Blog Talk Radio account every Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can now hear him regularly on the Man Cave with his good buddy Jeremy Lambert. He is one half of Occupy the Throne in the MMA section of 411 Mania. Give a warm welcome to Samer Kadi. How you doing, Samer?
Doing just great, and I'm super excited to be here. As I told Mark and Sean Comer that one time they had me to discuss, reviewing Batman movies, it generally feels refreshing whenever we're discussing anything that isn't MMA. Not that there's anything wrong with MMA, but every now and then you do need that change of pace. I
agree completely, especially after the last card, which had some issues, and to say the least.
Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about UFC 163 or Jose Aldo's broken foot. We're going to start this off with sharks because it is Shark Week on the Discovery Channel. You mentioned that you're a huge fan of sharks. I believe you went so far as to use the word nerd when describing your excitement for Shark Week. So maybe a little bit of your background. How'd you get into them? You mentioned to me before that you've been diving for a while, so if you could enlighten everyone about how you became associated with sharks, your thoughts on them, just a brief rundown as far as that goes.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been a bit of an animal geek since I was essentially very, very young. That's all I cared to play with when I was young. That was kind of toys I used to play with. But it wasn't until I grew a little older, like maybe in my maybe I was like 13 or whatever, I went to the Red Sea in Egypt. And we were doing like this quick submarine ride, and obviously the marine life there is gorgeous. And I get the idea, like, wouldn't it be cool if we see a shark? And it was weird because that's when everything started. I'm not sure clicking is the word, because for some people that's anything but clicking, but that's where the whole fascination started. And from there onwards, I really started like developing an fascination for the creatures. I wanted to learn pretty much everything there is to learn about them. That's when I really got into the whole Shark Week thing and spying documentaries and watching them on YouTube later on. And when I took up diving classes maybe 5 years ago, that was actually one of my secret goals of the whole thing, is to actually be able to dive with sharks. And initially, it was one of those things where you hope for, but at the same time, you have obvious trepidation, like how are you going to react if you're there? And at the same time, well, for somebody who lives in Montreal, that opportunity doesn't come every day, so you might actually just tell yourself, well, that's never going to happen anyway. But lo and behold, it did. We're diving in the Indian Ocean one day, and a black-tip reef shark swam right below me, maybe 7 feet below me. And it was weird because I was obviously, there was excitement there, but there was no fear. And that actually set the tone for pretty much every other encounter I've had with sharks. I've been lucky enough to encounter them about a dozen times now. I guess the most dangerous, quote-unquote, type of shark I've been around was the oceanic white tip, which is pretty damn dangerous and known to be a man-eater, and that was quite scary, to tell you the truth. Not that there was a close encounter or a near-death experience or anything, but it is intimidating to be in their presence. But, the more it happens, the more regular it becomes. And that's kind of how the whole thing works. When you're diving, you really can't pick and choose what you're going to see down there. So you have to pretty much accept the fact that you might encounter some scary creatures, and you have to just adapt, essentially, and be able to accept it. And that's actually the most thrilling part of diving, I feel, is just, becoming one with the ocean and then just being part of the whole food chain, which sometimes can not be such a good thing.
Yeah, on one of the Shark Week programming I saw last night, someone mentioned, I forget which one it was, but it was mentioned that, the ocean is not like, your backyard swimming pool. It is very much a wild place, and, like you said, when you're in there, you're part of the food chain. That's the domain of things that are not humans, because we have clearly not evolved to the point where we can exist safely under those particular set of circumstances. So
I think sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I don't think we've evolved to exist safely in any sort of circumstances, really, so let alone down there in the ocean.
It's true. Humans are surprisingly frail creatures, if not for our surprising ability to create essentially useless things that allow us to push other things around. We wouldn't be too very well off. Now, you just said you've encountered sharks a couple of times. Sharks seem to be one of those creatures that, by and large, instill an amount of fear into people, and in some cases with good reason. They're the apex predator as far as that goes, and by and large, sharks finished evolving, millions of years ago. They have not needed to evolve or to change at all since the megalodon went extinct some 2 million years ago, give or take, depending on which scientific point of view you tend to take as far as when the went extinct. But my opinion as far as any of these others that we're going to talk about by and large as well, they're just animals, and as long as you don't do anything stupid, you're probably okay. Which is one of the interesting things about, especially animals, as far as being a bad guy, being the antithesis, being the opposing force. Most of the time, if you avoid doing something stupid, you're probably going to be okay. And kudos to various screenwriters or novelists who have come up with inventive ways to kind of make us forget that for a brief period of time. But since we're talking about sharks specifically, a lot of the shark, especially the fear craze, came about courtesy of the Steven Spielberg movie Jaws. And I'm going to assume you've seen it, and if you haven't, I'm going to look like a complete idiot. So you have seen Jaws, yes?
No, of course I've seen Jaws.
So how did that play for you the first time you saw it? I'm kind of in the same boat that you are. I was certainly fascinated with sharks and all manner of, when I was a kid, if it was dangerous or potentially lethal, it was the epitome of coolness, so I had to know stuff about it. So how did that whole movie play for you when you first saw it? The 25-foot great white at the end that eats poor Robert Shaw off of the boat.
Yeah, I have to say, as far as I remember, no, obviously I saw the movie initially when I was like 5 maybe, so I couldn't be too sure, but I'm pretty sure that was my first exposure to sharks, even though, it wasn't much of an actual exposure to sharks. But I'm fairly sure I saw that movie way before I saw any documentary about sharks. Obviously, I was familiar with what sharks were at 5 years old, but it was really my first real, this is when it triggered my sense of curiosity initially about this whole shark thing. Like, obviously, even at 5, I was lucky enough to have parents who explained to me that, this is a movie and it's just exaggerated because they wouldn't want me to be terrified any time I'm in the water, which a lot of people were after that movie.
Yeah,
but at the same
horrifyingly
time,
effective.
Yeah, it is. And, can't deny that the movie itself is pretty good. But obviously, it's become a cliche to say this now, but yes, it has earned sharks a very undeserved reputation. Even Steven Spielberg himself went on to admit that. But, it's hard not to see why people would be scared of sharks without such movies. They look menacing. They live in the water, which is, for us, it's unknown territory. It's a very mysterious place, even without sharks. So how about, you have these menacing creatures with razor sharp teeth who have this reputation of actually attacking humans or, being eating machines, basically. And it's not hard to see why people would be scared of them. And obviously Jaws created the whole shark hysteria back in the 70s. And I'll say we haven't been able to shake it off since, really, because, sharks continue to get killed by humans with alarming rates every year, up to, in fact, some stats say as impossible as it is to believe 200 million sharks are killed by humans every year, or up to 200 million sharks, which is just an absurd number. And obviously it's unfair to blame all of that on Jaws, but there seems to be, for a lot of people, I just think a lot of people don't really care, because if you don't know any better, why would you care about this animal that's dying if he's just out there to kill you? For all we know, it makes the water a safer place. I know it sounds like a very simplistic and dumb way of thinking, but that's how a lot of people think. That's not to say that sharks are strictly killed because, people perceive them as representing a threat to humans. That obviously there are, far more important uses for shark finning and whatnot, but that hardly makes it okay. But in any case, to answer your question just about Jaws, I do feel it started the whole, because, it's Hollywood, and people watch movies, and it's not hard for something to become a bit of a trend. Whenever something's popular, whether good or bad, or no matter how flawed it is, it's easy for it to become sort of a trend, to become the talking point. And Jaws certainly was a phenomenon in its day. And great white sharks in particular have never been able to shake off that reputation thing. I mean, think of the whole cage diving thing. Yeah, it existed before Jaws, but till this day, humans believe that if you just dive without a cage at the great white, you're essentially done. And as you said, even with a creature as inquisitive as the great white shark, and don't get me wrong, it is going to come close to you, and it is going to fear you up, for lack of a better term. But as you said, if you don't do something stupid, which is admittedly easier said than done, you should be safe. The number of unprovoked attacks is extremely minimal in the grand scheme of things.
You have a better chance of getting struck by lightning while buying a winning lottery expression I heard, as far as being attacked by an unprovoked shark attack.
Actual statistics show that more people die as a result of a vending machine accident than they do of shark attacks. True story.
I would absolutely believe it. I mean, just the number of shark attacks in general is so low. I mean, I believe statistically you have a better chance of being struck by lightning than being attacked, or inquisitively killed is probably a more accurate phrase than attacked. But shark attack plays better in media.
That's so true. The only thing, actually, because I've heard all these absurd stats where you have a better chance of this or that than it is to get attacked by a shark. The one thing where this doesn't apply, you have a better chance of being attacked by a shark than to win the lottery, unfortunately.
Well, the odds on winning the lottery are so very long, and it's just, I mean, the statistics as far as winning the lottery goes are ridiculous. I mean, I heard a phrase similar to the one I just said, that you have a better chance of being struck by lightning while doing 3 other things than actually winning the lottery.
Well, there you go.
It's ridiculous. I mean, just when you understand the math behind it, it's why even bother? And of course,
right.
Of course, us talking about this is immediately going to precede some dumb schmuck winning $600 million.
Or some innocent soul getting attacked by a shark, but we're not wishing that upon anybody.
Well, and I also wanted to talk with you a little bit about, for those of us who enjoy animals like that, and be they sharks, a couple of other types of animals that we're going to get into a little bit here. As far as playing that off in the media, movies, television, etc., I mean, shark movies are obscenely prevalent, and I say obscenely because the movie Sharknado came out on Sci-Fi a couple of weeks ago, and just, God help me, anything with Tara Reid makes me want to vomit from my eyes. So I'm curious as to your opinion. Do you have, some favorite shark movies that you like to watch, whether they portray the sharks, good or bad, or as they should be portrayed as, you mentioned that Steven Spielberg kind of admitted that Jaws was more or less to the detriment of sharks everywhere. I think he was very cognizant of that fact later in his career, and in fact that I feel that informed his decision to when he made Jurassic Park, because he very specifically said, I want to film animals, not monsters. And the shark in Jaws trends a bit more towards monster territory, especially at the time, in the 70s when there wasn't as much information. There still isn't a whole lot of actual factual information about sharks. A lot of what has turned out to be fiction is just perceived so widely that we kind of take it as fact. So I'm just about, sharks in media and whatnot. Do you have favorites? Movies, again, games where they show up, just anything like that?
Well, let's be honest. Outside of Jaws, there aren't any actual really good movies about sharks. However, I do have my fair share of guilty pleasures.
Go for it, man.
Initially, I like
pleasures are just as viable.
Well, there you go. So I like Deep Blue Sea initially. I don't know, that scene where Samuel L. Jackson gets killed by the shark. I mean, even as ridiculous as it is nowadays, when I was 11 years old, watching that, I don't know, I jumped out of my seat when that shark just dove out of the water to just grab Samuel L. Jackson. I like that movie. Another really guilty pleasure of mine, one that isn't necessarily about sharks, but sharks are kind of prominent, at least they get a lot of screen time, if that's the right expression, is Into the Blue with this dude from Fast and Furious and Jessica Alba. I don't know if you've seen the movie.
I believe I have seen enough of that one. It's, Paul Walker, Jessica Alba. Oh, yeah, I've seen enough of that one. They're like treasure hunters.
Right. So I'll say this. I am a sucker. Exactly. The whole movie is one giant cliche. Like, I'm not even going to debate that. I'm not calling it a classic by any means. Hell, I don't even fault you if you just say it's just a mediocre movie, which it probably is. But I am a sucker for that sort of scenery. I am a sucker for this, like, the water, the Caribbean water, or the Pacific, the whole treasure hunting thing. Just any movie that predominantly takes place at sea, essentially, is gonna warrant my attention. And as long as it's not a complete piece of crap, I'll watch. Jessica Alba is a good enough eye candy to sustain my attention, and tiger sharks, which are my favorite sharks, being there is, good enough for me as far as I'm concerned. And that's one movie where, interestingly now, this is a useless bit of information, but an actual tiger shark was filmed throughout, like, every scene, even the one where he supposedly attacks humans. But in most scenes, he was actually almost steered by two obviously trained professionals. They were essentially holding him from each side and just directing him in the water, which takes a lot of balls. But, yeah.
Hey, we love useless trivia here. I'm a huge fan of trivia, random trivia and stuff like that. And, look, I'm not going to bash anybody anywhere for enjoying guilty pleasures. I mean, we've all got them. I've never seen the purpose in insulting someone's guilty pleasures. I mean, we've all got them. They're all, objectively speaking, more or less on the same level. Just because something is objectively good doesn't mean you have to like it, and the reverse is, of course, also true. I mean, one of my favorite movies of all time, I can sit down and watch Tremors all day long, and I'll be the first to admit it's just a send-up of the 50s horror movie. Nothing objectively great, but God help me, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't fault you. I should mention, though, and I neglected to mention this, have you seen Open Water, the first one?
I have not. I've been trying to, I mean, on the internet, you think I could find anything that I wanted with, you can, really. I just haven't been able to find it, but I remember when it came out, and people were talking about it because, it was just kind of so ominous and depressing throughout the whole thing. And,
it was.
You've seen, I'll take your word for, and which of course makes me want to see it a little more. I tend to enjoy things on the darker side, obviously. But I lost my train of thought there. But yeah, I remember sharks being featured in that, in addition to just the horror of coming up and your boat's not there if you're diving. I mean, you mentioned that you dive, so I personally can't imagine what that would feel like to just come up and there's nothing there when there's supposed to be a boat within a reasonable vicinity.
Oh, dude, like that movie actually traumatized me for a while. Well, that kind of my real fear was not to get eaten by a shark. It's to go up there and my boat isn't there, and then I'm stuck with my diving buddy, and that's no good. But I think the movie is worth a look. It is a surprisingly good movie. For a movie that essentially is all about two people interacting in the middle of the ocean with virtually nobody else, it's well made. I'm not calling it a classic or anything, but I don't think anybody could realistically come off that movie thinking, oh, that was awful. I don't think you could objectively, and you're right, you can hate anything and you can like anything, and that's fine. But objectively speaking, it's hard not to call it anything but at least a good movie. And while it's not strictly about sharks, it starts with the horrors of just not finding your boat there. Once they're completely lost, without spoiling anything, once they're completely just lost at sea, the main terror is always the sharks. That's the main menace. That's the main threat. It's recurring throughout the movie. And it's, for a movie that, again, portrays sharks in a negative image, it doesn't go into hyperbole mode. Yeah, if you get stuck in the middle of the ocean alone, you might get attacked by a shark. It happens. It's not the shark that's out for blood or anything. It's just, it happens.
It's a reasonable approximation of events that might take place, which there's a world of difference between that and some of the other, sci-fi, sci-fi original movies. God love them. They're so bad sometimes, but they tend to throw, again, sharks because they're relatively easy to work with. As far as anybody listening, if you want to have kind of a laugh as far as that goes, I dare you to go on Netflix and in their search bar, type in shark, and just look at all the stuff that comes up, because you'll get two-headed shark attack, shark versus crocodile, Sharknado will be out there very soon, I'm sure. Oh, it's so sad that there's so much bad stuff out there around them, because they're really interesting animals. I mean, the vast majority of shark species don't even look like you would expect them to look. I mean, there's over 200 species of sharks, since we're just talking about sharks, and not all of them even physically look like, the bull shark, the tiger shark, the elongated gray body with the almost tuna-like proportions. I mean, you have the smaller reef sharks. You have the really long ones that tend to hang out around reefs that are a lot smaller. I mean, there's so many different types. And
nurse sharks.
Yeah, nurse sharks. They're fun little guys. The whale shark, which couldn't hurt you if it tried. I mean, maybe it could land on you.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to actually swim with one, and the size is intimidating, but that's about it.
Well, especially when you understand that, they eat by just opening their mouth and inhaling a bunch of, water with small stuff in it. I mean, even if you got inhaled by one, there's not enough teeth or digestive fluid to cause you problems. It would probably just spit you back out.
Apparently, there's a video that's happening to a Japanese diver where he gets accidentally inhaled by the whale shark and just spits him right out. That couldn't have been fun, though.
That's one of those things that when you get over it, it's probably like, man, that was awesome.
I agree.
That's
one hell of a story to tell.
Yeah, how many people get to say, oh, by the way, I got spit out by a whale shark?
That's true, actually.
But in the realm of, and I didn't mention this beforehand to you, so I apologize if I'm going to spring this on you, but in the realm of fish that get a bad rap, in addition to sharks, we have everyone's favorite freshwater killer, piranhas.
The piranha, right.
Which, I don't know how many, everyone listening, piranhas, the amount of recorded attacks by piranhas on humans is ridiculously small. I mean, they're, a whole school of piranha is a fearsome sight, and yeah, they will strip the flesh from a cow, but I mean, I've only heard personally of maybe 3, maybe. I'm kind of pulling that off of, maybe I've heard of some that I haven't quite remembered fully, but that's another fish that, if you believe the movies, the 1970s Piranha, the remake that came out that was, granted, drastically over the top, but it had Christopher Lloyd in it, so it can't be all bad. But piranhas, they're another one that get a really bad rap as far as Hollywood goes, for want of a better.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's I don't know if it's possible to call that, but it's almost an even more undeserved rap than the ones shark get, because obviously, you have a bigger chance of being in contact with sharks than you do with piranhas. They're far more, spread out across the globe. They swim in the ocean. So, it's not a fair comparison from a strictly statistic or data point of view, but you at least still hear a shark attacks every now and then. I mean, I doubt that a year would go by without hearing about somebody, unfortunately, getting attacked by a shark or even dying as a result of a shark bite. But piranha attacks, now, that is extremely rare. Not only is it rare, but it's even rare to be attacked the way, it's portrayed in movies by, like, this huge-ass horde of piranhas that will just, as you said, just strip the flesh off your bones in a matter of minutes. That's not really likely at all, really.
I mean, that's how they hunt. They do, there's evidence, there's videos out there.
Yeah, they do hunt in packs. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, they do.
Hunt in packs.
I've heard of maybe 2 or 3 confirmed legitimate cases of some poor human being attacked and having parts of their anatomy stripped off by a school of piranha. And
obviously,
even then, the one time I can... Go ahead.
No, just move on with your point, and I'll backtrack off one thing, though.
Okay. The only one that I can think of that I have any deliberate, great recollection of is... speaking of kind of guilty pleasures, I kind of enjoy watching the River Monsters series on Animal Planet. And the host of that, Jeremy Wade, has done a lot of effort to dispel the myth that piranhas will attack people, unless you do something enormously stupid, like stumble into a bunch of them bleeding profusely and they haven't eaten for 3 days. He did have one story, I think it almost closed out the last season, no, that was Loch Ness, but about that time, that some piranha had attacked a person based on, and the whole point there is, well, okay, why would, we've had 2 documented piranha attack cases, what would cause this to happen? And the answer kind of came down to there's invasive fish species that have been introduced into their habitat that are making them compete for their normal prey together, and that's kind of what has lent them to be a bit more aggressive than they have been in the past, and even in different types of piranha. I mean, red-bellied piranha tend to fight in schools. Black piranha are much more solitary creatures, and yet, we've created the myth of these things will kill large numbers of people if they're released into a swimming pool at the same time.
Yeah, I think, what's really exaggerated is just how aggressive they are. Obviously, for a fish, especially a fish that size, they are highly aggressive. And as you mentioned, they do hunt in packs. And nobody's suggesting they're not dangerous. The same way I don't think anyone's suggesting sharks are not dangerous. But the thing with piranhas is it's not like, the moment they even hear your foot just stepping inside that water, they're on guard to just, they're just ready to tear your thighs off. That's not really how it works. And I feel with piranhas, the misconceptions are even bigger than that of sharks. Well, for starters, Shark Week is the best example. There are a lot of documentaries about sharks. That's not to say that there aren't about piranhas, but sharks in general are a far more popular topic, I would say. And people seem far more interested in actually learning about sharks. I mean, Shark Week alone has educated a lot of people. And even those who aren't, fully interested or fully, nerds, as I would call myself, they still know, or at least have heard the basic, I would say, rebuttals to the popular misconceptions about sharks. But with piranhas, that's not always the case. For example, we've all heard, and it's absolutely true, that most shark attacks are investigatory bites for the most part, because, a shark has no other way of actually recognizing what you are, so they're just going to take a bite, and unfortunately, that's often enough for a human being to lose a limb. But with piranhas, I feel like the amount of research isn't as extensive. The information isn't as well spread. People maybe just, I don't want to say don't care enough to learn, but it's not something you encounter every day, information about piranha, why do they attack, how often do piranhas attack, and all that stuff. So I think that kind of lends itself into creating an even bigger misconception about what they do. And sometimes there are some things that people just want to believe because it sounds cool. Like, it sounds cool that this small-ass fish just travel in packs and just is able to completely rip every piece of flesh off your bones in a matter of minutes. It just sounds creepy. And that's not to say that it's not possible, but people want to believe. They almost want to be afraid, if that makes any sense.
Oh, it does, and I completely agree. You know, one of the reasons I do this is because, this podcast in particular, is because I have a personal kind of fascination with, you know, the creepy, the crazy, the bad guys of the world, you know, real and imagined. And one of the things about something like a piranha, or, you know, we're going to get into a couple of other things here. I mean, if we want to just like debunk myths as far as stuff like that goes, I mean, pit bulls get a hugely undeserved reputation. But one of the reasons I do is because it is so interesting to see that people almost feel comforted if there's something out there they can point to and go, no, that's bad, that's the monster, that's evil.
Yeah, it is strangely fascinating, but I completely agree. It's just almost the same reason. I know it's a completely different topic, and we're not even going to attempt to go there, but it's the same reason I'm not saying everybody who believes that, you know, shares this line of thought, but it's exactly the kind of reason why some choose to believe that there's life beyond this planet. You know, that the threat of an alien invasion is there. You always want to feel that there's always this menacing thought, no matter where it is, whether it's in the bottom of the ocean, in the Amazon River, or on Jupiter or whatever.
Yeah, I agree. It's, you know, and it's, to be fair, it's kind of fun. I mean, there's a bit in almost all people that like to. Yeah, I mean, the thing that debuted Shark Week this week was the scientist who believed that he had encountered a megalodon, which, for those of you who don't know, megalodon is a prehistoric shark. It's believed to have gone extinct, is generally accepted. I mean, the irony of, you know, you get a room full of experts and they'll never agree on anything type of scenario, but by and large, it's accepted. A couple million years ago, the thing went extinct. It was very similar to the great white in terms of body type, as far as we've, you know, been able to speculate, and it was huge. I mean, it was over 100 feet long. They've made life-size models. I know they did for, again, if you watch Shark Week, they have made life-size models, and the thing is enormous. And, you know, now there's this marine biologist who's saying, we believe that we've encountered one, and you know, when you watch enough television, you can kind of tell, or any produced product, you can start to tell when the producers are editing or kind of slanting things a certain way, and the whole kind of slant as far as this one goes was, you know, maybe it's possible that a megalodon has survived, or more than one, and, you know, there's all these kind of fun statistics that you can bring up to get that little bit of doubt that maybe there is one. You know, we've only explored, you know, something like 5% of the ocean when you get below however many feet. You know, we know more about distant moons and galaxies than we do about, like, the Mariana Trench, for example. I mean, and there's all these fun little facts that you can bring up to just kind of make people believe that, you know, maybe there is one, and then, you know, but when you look at it objectively, it's like, no, it could not possibly still exist. Coincidentally, the novel Meg, I forget the author, which features same story, a megalodon coming out of the Mariana Trench and kind of repopulating, leads to a whole series. Fun book. I enjoyed it. That's one of my personal favorite, you know, as far as shark books go. I really enjoy that one. So, yeah, I kind of cut you off there. Sorry.
No. I actually didn't say anything, but I obviously, if we understand the fascination with sharks and piranhas, then we have to understand the fascination with megalodon, because, as you said, it's essentially a great white shark times 30, something like that. So, you know, that's a scary proposition. And, I mean, I saw that documentary you're referring to, the one at the beginning of Shark Week, and I enjoyed the topic. I find it hugely fascinating that a 100-foot shark once populated the Earth. I mean, you can't not be fascinated, even if you don't care about sharks, you know, because that's essentially, by today's language, this would be labeled as a monster. And I do enjoy the topic, but I don't really appreciate documentaries that are just throwing wacky ideas saying, well, what if, and maybe. And as you said, it's edited out in a very convenient manner that makes it sound as if, oh, it's possible. I mean, we've only explored, as you said, like 5% of the ocean. Well, that's certainly true. And, case in point, nobody knows where and how and whatever, like, great white sharks mate. And people have tagged great whites and have followed them. And we don't even know, not only have we never seen them mate, we don't know where they do that. So, that should tell you everything all you need to know, because they're creatures that are sought after and people want to learn, scientists want to learn about them, and yet we learn so little. So I guess by that logic you could say, oh, well, maybe a megalodon still populates the seas. But, I mean, deep down inside, even the wildest skeptics, or I guess not skeptics, but call them whatever you want to call them, I don't think anybody really believes that. There's just, it's fun to think of the possibilities that in today's world they would exist.
For me, that's like the X-Files post. I want to believe, but but with the caveat, I almost feel stupid for believing.
Yeah. I mean, it would be super cool, but it's just like, with the megalodon at this point, well, save for the fact that it actually existed once upon a time, but at this point it's sort of like the Loch Ness Monster or like Bigfoot or any of these popular myths. I mean, except that because it's supposed to live in the ocean, which is like this huge, vast place, the arguments for its existence can be stronger in that, well, we don't know. We've only explored so little of the ocean, whereas with Bigfoot or even a Loch Ness Monster, you just have this lake, and then, whether it's there or not. So, I mean, if you really want to reach, then maybe, but as you said, realistically, there's just no way. And, hey, to me, that's unfortunate. I do wish they existed. Wouldn't want to stumble upon one, though.
No, I mean, again, if you've ever seen the models, just the jaws from these things, it's enormous, and it's a terrifying prospect by and large. But again, it's one of those things that, when you see something that, especially in that where it's supposed to be extinct, and all of a sudden, you discover it, or, I mean, that's, and to that point, that stuff has happened with marine life for quite a while now. I mean, things that have supposed to have been extinct have been discovered pretty recently. In fact, there was like a whale species that we finally found that a recently deceased example of was discovered, and it's kind of sad because it is so cool, but at the same time, all of the kind of conspiracy theorists, for want of a better phrase, they're just going to start pointing at that. And I mean, I'm kind of like you as far as like Bigfoot goes. These poor people who are out there trying to prove that they exist and document, and it's just like, if they were out there with all of you idiots out there trouncing around looking for them, somebody would have seen something by now.
Right. Especially because it is a land animal. I mean, I'm not saying we know every single land animal in existence. In fact, I know we don't. And even today, we find out about new species still. But, I mean, you'd think there'd be, with today, you go on YouTube and you see all these animal encounters. On a daily basis, you can find new videos of, like, wolf encounters, grizzly bear encounters, these amateur footage. Shark encounters, everything, you name it. And I'm supposed to believe that in, 100 years, nobody has been able to see this, Sasquatch that is just walking around in the woods. I want to believe it, I really do, as you said, but there's no realistic way of that being the case.
It's, and especially with, as far as Bigfoot goes, especially there's like 2 or 3 different shows on television now dedicated to following these people who are looking for them, and it's all, if you want a bunch of unintentional humor, that's one of your shows, by all means.
But that's a fairly creative way of wasting your time. If you want to really waste your time doing something utterly useless and with no possible positive outcome, you might as well go look for Bigfoot.
It's true, and to be fair, you will get people who will donate money to your cause.
Yeah, so there you go.
There you go. It's crazy. All right, we also wanted to discuss specifically and another animal that in some cases gets kind of a bad rap and in some cases it's deserved, although I tend to follow. I told my brothers once, after watching an episode of The Walking Dead, I forget the specific episode, in Season 2, Carl stumbles across a zombie that is stuck in the mud. And he proceeds to throw rocks at it until it becomes so enraged it escapes, follows him, kills Dale. And I watched this with my brothers, and I immediately, after it was over, looked at them and said, that was stupid of him. Do not do anything stupid. And that's kind of my general refrain with them and with a lot of people, and it doesn't have to be at people younger. My own personal mantra, don't do anything stupid. And it's not as easy as it sounds all the time, and I bring that up because I want to move on to snakes here because they also kind of get a bad rap. And people get bitten by them. People die from snake bites or other attacks if you're stupid enough to keep a giant boa in a position where it could potentially get around your neck. Don't do anything stupid is a pretty good piece of advice as far as that goes. But I want to talk about snakes, and they get kind of a bad rap too. If you want to have fun, look up snakes on YouTube and see how many different bizarre, poorly done movies you get, like Komodo dragon versus King Cobra. It's out there, folks. I'm not making that up. So,
I generally thought you were. I thought you just shot from the hip, came up with two animals.
No, that's real. That is completely legitimate. I couldn't make that up if I tried. But so, your impression of, are you into snakes at all? Do you?
Oh, absolutely.
Same thing.
I'm into reptiles in general.
Reptiles are awesome.
I'm into No, go ahead.
I just said reptiles are awesome.
Oh, well, crocodiles and snakes, I'd say after sharks, they're probably tied for, my second favorite animals. I do enjoy reptiles. Snakes, as far as their reputation, they have the misfortune of being reptiles because most people do not like reptiles, let's be honest. Reptiles are not cute.
The textile would be probably the element to it. They feel different than you expect them to, and people react kind of oddly to that.
Yeah, and they almost, I was talking about this to a girl I know once, and she says, reptiles, they feel gross. Now, I don't know what that means, but I see why she would think that, just watching them crawling around. Even a frog is actually an amphibian, so never mind. But just looking at a lizard or a snake or whatever, I would understand why some people would get that feeling, especially, snakes happen to be arguably the most menacing of reptiles. But, as far as the actual attacks go, as is the case with sharks, there are generally a lot of unfortunate accidents. As you mentioned, there are cases where people are just stupid, and that's unfortunately something that can never be controlled. Speaking of evolution, I don't think we'll ever evolve to that point where stupidity does not exist. But
that's because human beings have nullified the theory of evolution with their ability to save people from their stupidity.
I can't argue with that. But
different topic. I've had that discussion before, but moving on.
Moving on. With snakes, in countries like, in a continent like Africa and a country like India, you are subject to snake attacks if you're some poor guy who works at the cornfield or something in India, and most of the time they're barefoot, and you accidentally stumble upon a Russell's viper, and that's always a possible, not a likely one, but it's a possibility, and it happens. But at the same time, snakes are provided you actually see them and do not accidentally step upon one or are not startled by suddenly encountering one and the snake reacts to you being afraid or whatever, provided you could actually see the snake, it is even more harmless than a shark because sharks are inquisitive. Sharks are generally, sharks that are known to attack humans. Yeah, sharks that are known to attack humans, they're generally not afraid to approach you. Any shark that's about your size is, generally not going to be intimidated by you. And they'll be swimming around you. But a snake, especially, I mean, we're talking about venomous snake for this example.
Yeah, sure.
At the moment, yes. So venomous snakes, I mean, why? Just logically speaking, why would a snake waste its venom on you? I mean, most of the time, in fact, most snake bites are not lethal because the snake only injects a fairly minimal amount of venom. In fact, there's a large recorded attacks of bites by venomous snakes where venom is nowhere to be found inside your body because the snake just does not inject any. Snakes generally, they save their venom, not generally, almost all the time. They're going to save their venom to either when they're threatened by another creature or they want to hunt, which is what most predators do, and that's what snakes do. I mean, a rattlesnake is generally going to save its venom for a rodent. That's really how things work. So a snake is not, it's just not going to come up to you and bite you for shits and giggles, I don't think. And this is why I feel with snakes, it's even easier to debunk every single myth just by using pure logic. But at the same time, like sharks, they are oddly menacing, the way they look, the way they move around. It's even more intimidating, the fact that, maybe not intimidating, but more worrisome, I guess, for some, that you get in contact with them on land. They might, sneak up. And if you live in Australia, I mean, God help you, I'm sure most people, not most, but a lot of people in Australia have encountered a snake even in their house at one point or another. So that always, makes this whole sensation of fear towards snakes all the more magnified, I guess. But at the end of the day, they're really, I don't want to say harmless because maybe that's an exaggeration, but they're really, really not nearly as bad as most make them out to be.
Yeah, as far to comment briefly on your dry bite thing from earlier, for those of you who don't know, I live in Utah. I've been hiking here plenty of times, and southern Utah is kind of a desert, and we have a lot of rattlesnakes. The first few times I went out, I was told, watch for them, don't be stupid. But if you get bit, it's the little ones you have to watch out for, because the young snakes do not have the muscular control over their venom glands, and if they bite you, they're going to dump all of their venom into you. Whereas the older snakes, they know how to regulate it a little bit more because venom takes energy to produce. So they tend to be more just, they'll bite you, there are species of cobra that don't even bite, they'll just headbutt you, if you kind of get into that. But since we are talking about snakes, I hate to say this again, but, one of my first memories as far as, snakes going also involves our good friend Steven Spielberg. I grew up, with Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, one of my all-time favorite movies to this day, and that sequence when Indiana Jones falls down off of the rope and that cobra just goes from being just one of the other snakes to all of a sudden back up, hood out, staring Indy in the face. It's an iconic sequence, and that's what kind of triggered my interest in snakes in general. But it's still an intimidating thing to have, especially from a small child watching a movie. I mean, my parents didn't, they were good about not scared or anything, but at the same time, it's like, no, there's actually glass, and if you look closely, you can kind of see the reflection here. The snake puffs back up, and which you can, but that's not. But that remains a very iconic sequence. I mean, so do you have any movies that kind of stick out to your mind where snakes play a prominent role as being kind of being the bad guys? Of course, if we could ignore snakes on the plane for just a moment.
Yeah, I was just about to mention that. Just I was in the topic Samuel L. Jackson earlier. That movie, even for guilty pleasure purposes, should not exist. I'm sorry. That's the one time I'll criticize your taste in movies if anybody mentions that. But originally, I think most of this stems back to childhood memories. So, because, as we grow up, we're far more selective about the shit we watch, let's be honest.
Oh, yeah.
One of my first exposure to any movies with the snake as a protagonist, I guess, if you want to call it that, or as you said,
protagonist, antagonist, however you want to phrase it.
Yeah, antagonist, that's exactly what it is, was Anaconda. Now, obviously, this is, not venomous snakes, but...
they're huge snakes, and they'll still eat you, if you listen to John Voight.
Oh, that's. I mean, the cast was famous enough. As I said, I am a sucker for settings, so the fact that it was taking place, in the Amazon, on a deck for the most part, that kind of attracted me. And I was actually, as a kid, I had never heard of an anaconda. I had no idea what that was. So, that movie, obviously, was, that was more of a movie about a monster rather than a real animal, which is what we were talking about earlier. But that's really, that helped in starting, my whole fascination with snakes as well. As you just mentioned, a lot of these things take place, you mentioned Indiana Jones and that iconic scene with the cobra. A lot of these weird fascinations or interests or whatever, they start with movies oftentimes. So, that's when that started. I feel like there's an obvious example I'm missing about a movie with what is it called? Is it those three brothers that go into the wild to film, get amateur footage, and they wanted to film like a cave full of grizzly bears. What is it called?
Oh yeah, Wild America.
Is it America
Jonathan
something?
Taylor Thomas. I think it's Wild America. Give me a second.
Wild America, that's what it is. And again, as a child, I enjoyed that movie. And there's this scene where they walk into the cage to film the grizzlies, and they stumble upon this huge swarm of rattlesnakes. And to me, that was what stuck with me the most from that movie. Not the scene with the moose, not the scene with the American eagle, not even the encounter with the grizzly, which was supposed to be, the climax of the movie. No, it was the moment right before that when, they encountered the rattlesnakes, and their great idea of actually sidestepping them was to pour snow on top of them, as if that's supposed to stop them if you're stepping on them for some reason. But hey, it worked. And, that's another movie that really stuck with me. Again, as I said, I was a huge animal geek, so that movie was all about, three young men who loved to film animals, so that kind of resonated with me. And, yeah, as I just said, the snake scene really stuck with me. Especially, that sound, the rattling sound of rattlesnakes. It's become part of American culture, almost. You might have no interest in snakes whatsoever, but if you hear that, you know what it is.
I believe the sound of a rattlesnake is in the top 10, if not top 5, most recognizable sounds in the world. Number 2 being the cocking of a 12-gauge shotgun, and number 1 being a crying baby.
That's actually fascinating, but yeah, I can definitely see, because there's no way in hell you could mistake it with anything else.
Yeah, if you don't mind a brief personal anecdote, I mentioned I'd been hiking plenty of times in southern Utah, and on one outing, we were going through a slot canyon, which, for those of you who don't know, it's a canyon that's with fairly close walls. We were kind of sideways on it. We had to walk sideways through it. The walls were that close together. And coming into one part where it opened up a little bit wider, I was, I think, not in the front, but I was the second guy from the front in the line that we were walking in. And we stepped into this slightly wider part, and you hear that. You hear that rattlesnake go, and for just a minute, it's like, wait a minute, what is that? And then the scout leader who was behind me pushed me off to the side, away from the snake, and it was this little one. It was under a crevice on the other side, and I mean, it wasn't bothering us. Again, we're in very confined quarters here, so it's scary, and it's again, it's a little one, and we've all been told, they're the ones you got to watch out for, because if they bite you, they're going to dump all of their venom into you. And we proceeded to very slowly kind of edge around it, because there was enough room for us to get by safely. And you leave a marker on each side. By the way, there's a snake here. But for me, the scariest part about that particular encounter was not the rattling of the snake. It was actually when it stopped, because when you're in that situation, it's almost oddly comforting to hear it, and then it stops rattling, and you wait, what the hell is going on? Something changed.
I can actually tell. In fact, in the movie Open Water, at one point, sharks are circling them, and only one of the two protagonists has either they were diving goggles or a diving mask, and he was, looking at them, and then he stopped seeing them anymore. And his wife says, I don't know what's worse, seeing them or not seeing them. And I can totally see that. And it's the same way with your example. And then at least when they're making that noise, it's there. You can react accordingly. It's the silence that's most menacing.
Well, plus they're supposed to stop rattling right before they strike.
Right,
and
yeah.
of course, being a scout camp out, the night before, everyone's mentioning, goofy things about snakes, and you have leaders who are kind of giving you the, the nudge as far as, as soon as they stop, man, you'll just, I don't know, we'd have to carry you out, and then those slot games, now we might actually have to leave, if you've ever been on a scout trip, you kind of know the stuff I'm talking about, but, you mentioned Anaconda. I rewatched it recently, not in preparation for this because I wanted to. I can no longer hate the Anaconda in that because it eats Owen Wilson. Anytime Owen Wilson dies in a movie, it goes up in my estimation.
I'd completely forgotten about that, right? Because Owen Wilson in that movie, doesn't he hook up with that Carrie Warner chick from that hot brunette girl? And then the Anaconda.
Jennifer Lopez.
Yeah, right. I'd completely forgotten about that scene. I hadn't seen that movie in years. Now that you mentioned that, I had even forgotten that Owen Wilson was in there. So yeah, that actually does kick the movie up a few notches. I'm with you on that one.
I had forgotten about it too till I rewatched it. I'm like, wait, there's Owen Wilson. Oh wait, his character dies. This movie's awesome. I like the movie Armageddon. That has a lot to do with it too. Owen Wilson dies in space. He's not even on the planet when he dies. This is good.
If only there were so many Ben Affleck deaths, then I'll be happy.
Ben Stiller can die horribly and painfully on film, and I'll just legitimately on film. By the way, I will buy the snuff film, people. That's a horrible thing. The other thing I wanted to get into, since we're still on this same thing, I wanted to talk briefly, since we got about 20 minutes and change left. Since you're kind of you like spikes, you like sharks, snakes, that kind of stuff. How are you about spiders?
Again, I am fascinated by wildlife in general. Spiders are no exception. However, I would say my fascination is not as intense. However, yeah, I mean, I know my fair share about spiders. I would say no, I wouldn't say I'm obviously not scared of sharks since I actually seek them out. I'm definitely not scared of snakes, but for some reason I would find a spider more, I don't know, I think I'd rather encounter a snake in my room than a spider. I just think I just get this visual of waking up in the middle of the night with this a spider crawling all over you. It's more likely than, a snake crawling all over you. I don't know, I get that. And they do give me, or at least they used to give me the chills, I'll say that. But you know what? I was in Australia once, and
I'm glad you came out of there alive.
It's
for anyone who doesn't know, as a brief aside, there is a video on YouTube that is set to this little catchy kind of jingle about come to Australia where you might accidentally get killed, and it happens to list all of the venomous or dangerous animals that live within there. There's three or four different species of spider. There's 4 different snakes. There's an octopus that's potentially lethal. There's a couple of different jellyfish species. Australia is not a hospitable continent, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, dude, far from it. I mean, let's put it this way. When Steve Irwin, bless his soul, died, they were filming a show called Ocean's Deadly, and each and every single one of those creatures happened to inhabit Australia. Even on land, I mean, seriously, you have the most venomous snake in the world, which is the inland taipan, and it lives in the Australian desert. You have the black widow spider. You have the box jellyfish, which is the most venomous creature on Earth, kill you in about 3 minutes, give or take. So that's, and it's a jellyfish, right?
They have the jellyfish, they have sea snails, they have
sea snails,
the
great white sharks, saltwater crocodiles. Right, exactly.
I forgot about them, but yeah, they have the crocodiles.
Yeah, they have saltwater crocodiles, great white sharks, tiger sharks, you name it. Seriously, that country, yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. When it comes to Australia, I mean, the continent on the whole, but, the country too, it's not fun if you're not a fan of things that could kill you.
So anyway, you were there and we were talking about spiders.
Yeah,
so.
and that's I was a bit younger than that, and that's why everybody was talking. Nobody talked about all the other things I just mentioned. All they kept mentioning was spiders for some reason, as if a snake is fine. And they keep mentioning, spiders, and I go there, and this friend of mine happens to own a tarantula. So
okay.
That actually, it was a bit of a shock therapy treatment, and that really forcing me to hold that thing because I had lost a bet, that did it for me. Yeah, it was. It was a video game bet, and I don't even recall what was the game we were playing, but I lost, and yeah, I held that tarantula for a good 5 seconds, and that wasn't fun. They're surprisingly heavy, and
yeah, they're actually
since
pretty dense.
then, oh really?
Well, what kind of tarantula do you remember, or?
Oh no, that was a while ago. I have no recollection. I mean, I could text him right now, but I don't think it's worth it. But I really don't recall actually. It was a good,
keep going.
maybe 7-8 years ago. So.
Well, tarantulas in general, they're fun. Tarantulas are fun because they're large and they're impressive and they are in no way potentially lethal, short of 20 or 30 biting you in the throat so that it causes your airways to constrict. I mean, they're actually relatively harmless.
I wouldn't have called it otherwise. But it's with this spider, it's almost like the way it walks and moves around that's more intimidating than the bite itself, which is not to say that a bite would be fun. But they do look menacing with the way they walk around, if that makes sense. It's almost the same thing with snakes or with the way sharks swim around. Because if you watch a shark swimming around, it's usually fairly chill, for lack of a better term. It almost exudes confidence, which is really intimidating in a way. I would say the same thing about a spider, plus its agility, its ability to move around. They do scare me because, like any insect, I mean, it has the ability to basically crawl out of anywhere. So spiders, they can be very chilling. And I saw that stupid Jeff Daniels movie. And
Arachnophobia.
Yeah.
One of my all-time favorites.
Exactly. Well, there you go. It's actually a good movie. I'll say that.
Yeah,
that didn't help.
It's crazy because I know people who have become permanently scared of spiders because of that movie.
Exactly. I've honestly, I know a couple of girls who watch it together apparently, and they've generally developed a serious fear of spiders because anything that you feel might have more access to you is immediately more scary. Which is why I think...
I mean, they can come from anywhere. And, I mean, the irony of that being that the spiders that they use, the primary spiders that they use for that, the flat kind of, the ones that are supposed to be the hybrid of the evil Brazilian spider and the local spider, are more or less completely harmless. They chose those spiders, one, because they look kind of weird. They move a little bit weird, but not only I'm not even sure they've been recorded having bitten people. I mean, they're that kind of passive. And they look really cool, but they're Avondale wolf spiders. They come from a specific region of New Zealand, I believe, off the top of my head. But they're pretty big, and they look kind of funky, and, again, they're, perfectly harmless.
Well, luckily for the actors. But that's the thing. I think, we can almost, sum up everything we've said about every one of these animals with the fact that it's almost always the reputation and the look that really, as you said, they look scary. So that's often enough. You just, you just want to stop it there. You don't even want to learn more. I mean, an example, you just mentioned that example of spider. I'd say, the sand tiger sharks, which is or it's also called a gray nurse shark sometimes. It looks menacing as hell, yet it is one of the safer sharks to be around, at least among the ones that look like it could rip your face off. It is extremely docile, in fact, surprisingly so, but looks scary as hell, and that's often enough for people. And, spiders are the same. I think the main problem is, essentially, it's just lack of education about these particular topics. And, I mean, on one hand, it's understandable because you can't expect everybody to just want to learn about everything. But I think even if you would assure everybody that a particular species of spider is completely harmless, if you see that crawling around your living room, well, not you, but, any other person, I don't think their reaction would be any less panicky.
Right. My rule with spiders is pretty simple. If you're in the house and I see you, you're dead. If you're outside and you're potentially dangerous to other people, you're dead. Otherwise, live long and prosper.
Oh, well, that is a healthy approach.
I mean, I'm not under the delusion that there aren't spiders within my house. I'm pretty sure that there are. If I don't see them and they're not potentially dangerous, if they keep the population of flies and box elder bugs and whatnot down, good on them. If I see you and you're in the house, you die. If you're outside and you're not potentially dangerous, I have no qualms with you being outside. That's kind of where you're supposed to be.
Another piece of useless trivia, it's Avondale spiders, the ones used in arachnophobia. Avondale, yeah. But I just Googled that, by the way, obviously. But, I mean, that's a healthier approach. Mine is even more pacifist. I really hate killing living creatures. I mean, if you're a spider and you're dangerous and you're in my house, you're dead. If you're a cockroach, you're dead, just because I hate those little fuckers. But
everyone hates cockroaches. Cockroaches serve no purpose. That's why everyone hates them. I mean, 90% of all insects, you can point to what they do in the ecosystem, in the food chain, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and you can kind of go, okay, so I can kind of justify letting the bees live, not the hornets because they're mean, but the bees I can let you live, or, mosquitoes even serve their purpose. I mean, I'm not a fan of mosquitoes either, but again, they serve their purpose. Cockroaches do not serve a purpose. They exist simply to propagate themselves, and they're not even necessarily a great food source for other insects. I mean, cockroaches suck.
Yeah,
that's kind of my approach to that.
Well, that's a decent way of putting it, really. And I generally want to, unless you're an insect, I generally want to stay away from killing anything. Don't get me started on rats, by the way. By far, I mean, I'm an animal lover, but I hate rats with a passion. So, God forbid, never find a rat in my house, thank God. But if I ever find one, yeah, I guess if I'm not dead first.
You're going to burn the house down and move?
You
find a rat in your house,
very,
you're
very
burning
possible.
it down and moving?
Yeah, and collecting that insurance money, sure. I mean, no, but really, it is. I'm not saying I'm definitely not sleeping at home if there's a rat. I mean, I won't even say it's dead because I'm not going anywhere near that. But as far as a spider is concerned, honestly, if I get the chance to somehow take it out unharmed, I would. In fact, that once, like back when I still used to live in Lebanon as I was a child, a snake once. I don't even know what kind of snake it was, but a snake, snuck around the house, and I was very adamant on not killing it for some reason. And my dad used like a groom or something to just take it out, like really crocodile hunter style. And yeah, at least he told me he kept it alive, so maybe he was lying all along, not to hurt my feelings. But if you're like an exotic creature and I have a chance to let you live, I would.
Well, and just as a point of, maybe kind of a counterpoint to what we've been talking about as far as animals that look scary and are potentially dangerous and that we perceive as, killers and dangerous and everything. As kind of a counterpoint, we've mentioned the late Steve Irwin, and God bless him. He did so much good work for animals and in general. But the poor guy was killed by a stingray. I mean, he was like the only recorded fatality since the 1820s. I mean, here's a guy who spent his life handling venomous snakes, crocodiles, all these dangerous things, and a stingray stabs him through the heart with its spine. I mean, just of all the luck.
That is a cruel twist of irony. Honestly, when I read that, I still remember the newspaper article. Yeah, I didn't even read it on the internet, actually. It was in a newspaper article, and I was generally bummed out, sorry. I genuinely was. And it was really, when I read that it's a stingray, I was like, what? And I just started diving back then. I had already seen plenty of stingrays, and, you know, but nobody, I mean, pretty much everybody treats them like they're harmless, because most of the time they really are. And it was like, that is ironic. I mean, this dude, as you just said, handled all sorts of, like, Komodo dragons, sharks, crocodiles, all sorts of venomous snakes, and dies at the, well, I guess not at the hands of a stingray, but, you know, somehow it made things worse, even. And more than that,
I hate to laugh about it, but how can you? It's one of those things, like, you can't help but laugh.
I mean,
and it's
not ha-ha laugh, like, not as if, a very ironic laugh, I would agree. And I just mentioned this, like, he died while filming a show called Ocean's Deadliest, and, you know, you read there's the box jellyfish, all sorts of animals we mentioned, the great white shark, saltwater crocodile, all these animals. And while filming that show, to add to the irony, he dies due to a stingray. I mean, I'm sure stingray wasn't even on the menu as far as the Ocean's Deadliest is concerned, and yet somehow
I would assume not even close. Like I said, there's been like 2 reported fatalities since the mid-1800s. I mean, just something stupid. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just about to say, you're absolutely right. And like the one fatality that happens now, essentially it took away probably the most popular and most famous. Well, he's no real animal scientist, I guess. Wildlife, whatever you want to call him.
Wildlife enthusiast.
What would you call Steve Irwin? Sure, enthusiast. That's really what he is. He is a wildlife enthusiast, and he is by far the most popular, I think, and probably the most famous. And there he goes. And the funniest part is that, you know, every time I used to watch this show, like one of my parents would say, that dude is going to get killed one day. Except when they say that, nobody really thinks, due to stingray. It's more of a, and it's not going to get stung by a stingray one of these days. You'll see. It's more like, that crocodile is going to rip his head off one of these days or whatever. And, there he goes. It's sad, but at the same time, as you said, you can't help but laugh, not in a ha-ha kind of way, obviously.
It's not actively funny or divisive, but that's the only response that, I mean, if I had the same kind of reaction recently, I've catching up on Breaking Bad, and there's this scene where, I don't know if you've seen the show, but where this poor guy who has been embezzling, and Walter White's wife is the accountant there, and she's gone through all these gesticulations to try and get him to pay off what he owes the IRS, and he's just not doing it. So she gets their attorney, Saul Goodman, to send a couple of goons over with the express instructions of do not harm him. Make him write the check to the IRS, make all that happen. No physical harm is to come to this guy. And he tries to run away from them, trips on a loose area rug, and crashes headfirst into his kitchen island, breaking his neck. I mean, you can't help but laugh. It's not funny, but that's the only reaction you can have.
I mean, and that's scripted. So when something similar happens in real life, that's almost, I was going to say funnier, but you know what I mean.
The emotion is intensified. We'll just go with that, I think.
Yes, let's put it that way. Whatever emotion that is. But it is, honestly, an emotion of, I don't want to say grief, but, like, we were talking about documentaries about animals, and we were talking about Discovery Channel and Animal Planet, and Steve Irwin is somebody who was strongly associated with both, and as you said, has really done such a tremendous job. I mean, I'm not turning this into a tribute for the man or anything, but it's hard to think of snakes, for example, and not think of Steve Irwin. It's hard to think about what we know about them, even spiders.
You'll hear the crikey.
Well, there you go.
I don't mean to be
really
disingenuous, but his crikey is still kind of internally emblazoned in my mind.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's really part of what made him recognizable or memorable. But the man did, tremendous work, and I feel like, a lot of maybe unconsciously, but many of us who now find ourselves regularly tuning into the Animal Planet and watching just random documentaries about wild animals probably are more accepting to do so, because at one point we used to watch, the Crocodile Hunter, and he was kind of likable, so we were conditioned to watch these things.
Yeah, there is some of that, definitely. And to kind of go on wrapping this up, I want to mention, as far as, we talked about Steve Irwin and the stingray, that, again, two people in the last 200 years, something like that. There are plenty of legitimately dangerous animals that do not necessarily look dangerous. I mean, I still remember the first time I heard it, I almost couldn't believe it. But because, again, for those of you who don't know, I was born in 1985, just to kind of date myself here. But I grew up with the hippopotamus as kind of the Disney cartoon character. So when I was 11 or so, and I heard that, by the way, hippos kill more people per year than any other animal in Africa, I kind of went, wait, what? But, that's one of those, there are plenty of animals that don't look harmful, but hippos will kill you dead, man. Those things are mean.
Yeah, they're extremely territorial. Extremely territorial. It's not so much for hunting purposes. They're just aggressive and territorial. Especially, mothers are overprotective, to say the least. And, yeah, we almost think of hippos as being somewhat cute. But, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, it often is animals that you don't really think of, or, you don't normally associate with, dangers and predatory behavior that cause the most frequent, cases of death. I mean, buffaloes in Africa kill a lot of people as well. Just people being, run over by.
Buffalo.
Yeah. So, and we were talking about marine life. I mean, you just mentioned the box jellyfish, but we know jellyfish sting, so usually you don't we already have not so flattering views about them, but you look at something like the lionfish. I mean, the first time I encountered one while diving, I didn't even know what it was, and it is extremely poisonous. And you look at it, and it's just like this gorgeous-looking fish, and it just, as you said, it's some animals get a bad rap, and it's undeserved, while others fly under the radar despite causing far more human fatalities. It's which is, again, I guess it's a testament to how much we're influenced by the media, by and by the way animal looks, really. As I said, you look at a shark and it looks like it's ready to eat you, but you look at a hippo and you might think it's cute and
it's kind of cute.
Needs a hug.
It's sad. It can't possibly get to me.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, I mean, appearances can be very deceiving, especially in the animal. I think in the animal world it even applies more than humans.
Oh yeah, I mean, you make your home in Montreal. I don't know how relevant this would be, but one of the most dangerous animals that I've seen personally. I mean, if you've never seen a moose, and you don't know that it's, I had the greatest line about moose once. They're the most even-tempered creatures you will ever meet. They are always pissed off. And a moose will kill you dead. It'll trample you, but if you don't know how dangerous it is, it looks kind of goofy. You think, it's kind of. You might even think back to Bullwinkle from Rocky and Bullwinkle, and no, man, moose are mean. Disclaimer to everyone out there: if you see a moose, very carefully move away from it, because it will trample you into the ground and not think twice.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like aggression. I guess there are a lot of animals that just don't do it because they're predators. They're just either aggressive or territorial. And moose, I don't claim to know enough about moose, but I know they're aggressive as hell. I mean, that's actually a very good example, because I mean, it's not like, it's weird because you think of something usually like an aggressive animal, like let's take the bull shark. Well, we've all heard that, they have the highest level of testosterone out of any animal in the world. And I mean, that alone should be scary because, well, they're sharks and have high levels of testosterone, so, there you go. But
so they're the Vitor
I don't know
Belfort of the ocean.
Yeah, I was about to make an MMA joke, actually, but then I opted against it. But, yeah.
I'll go there.
Actually, I'll throw over you. Oh, cool. But, yeah, that threw me off completely. But, okay, but a moose, see, I don't exactly know why they're that aggressive, but I mean, as you said, they are highly aggressive, and they almost, because a moose almost looks like it's a bigger deer, almost, so you're not really prompted to be wary, to just show it the respect it deserves, I guess. And really, ultimately, that's what it boils down to, just showing these animals respect. And I really feel that if people do, then their chances of encountering any sort of misfortunes decrease significantly.
It's true. I mean, that's one of the reasons I opened with, try not to do anything stupid. If you're, be educated about the situation you're going into. If you're going to be in an area where there are moose or there are bear, know how to properly store your gear so that you do not attract said animal. I mean, I went hiking in a place that had a lot of bear activity, and they all knew it. The people who ran the place knew it, so they educated us on the Bermuda Triangle, which was your fire pit, your cooking area, and the area where you disposed of excess food. You store your gear in bear bags it's just a line suspended between two poles that's 30 feet off the ground, so the bear can't, if it can smell it, it can't get at it. Just educate yourself, and you have again, all this is providing that all animals are non-ill, because even your lovable Saint Bernard, if it gets rabies, can trap you in a car in the blistering sun, and courtesy of Cujo there. But assuming all things are well and equal, then just as long as you don't do anything too stupid, you should be fine.
Yeah, obviously there are always room for accident. I mean, we hear it all the time, like a hiker getting attacked by a mountain lion, and a lot of these attacks are kind of, you just don't see them coming, so they're ambushed essentially, and in that case, there's really nobody to blame, including the animal itself. I mean, it's just doing what it's doing. But
there's just random chances involved with everything.
Right, but as long as you can see the animal, you honestly should be fine if you don't do anything stupid. And sometimes saying something stupid, stupid is sometimes harsh.
It's also it's not only hard, it's relative.
Right. And sometimes some things just boil down to ignorance. I mean, sometimes you might react in a way that makes you look like a prey. So a bear might, move for the kill. So, these things, if you just don't know any better, and again, it's much easier said than done. I mean, who knows how we would react in a scenario when you're possibly fearing for your life, but hopefully we'll never find out. But, it's sort of like, just, have a level head, and if you get the chance to think before you act, well, which you almost always do, then do it.
Yeah, I agree, and, make an effort to educate yourself when you're going into situations that you're not familiar with, or that you're aware of animals like that being around. Keep a level head if you can. I mean, again, easier said than done, but not all animals are bad guys, people. We've spent the last 90 minutes or so kind of debunking some of the more well-known ones. So, Samer, you got anything to plug for next week?
No, I mean, next week, Jeremy and I kind of are always a bit impromptu with our column topics, so we haven't really thought that far ahead. Though just today, the latest episode of Occupy the Throne was put into system. I think, actually, yeah, definitely, it came out. We discussed Bellator's move to pay-per-view, so give that one a read. And check out the Man Cave podcast reviewing the awesome UFC 163. Is that what it was? And by awesome, I mean awful, because it was a dreadful card. Jeremy and I spent like an hour talking about everything else that is totally irrelevant to the card, and about 30 minutes talking about the card. But give that one a try too. And that's about it. And expect some previews for next week's card as well in podcast form too. So there's that. And I'd just like to thank you for having me. As I said, it's always refreshing to talk about anything that is an MMA, and with Shark Week, this does feel relevant. And animals are a bit of a passion of mine, so it's cool to be able to discuss them. And I was happy we were able to touch on all the important points, I would say.
I'm very happy to have you. You're welcome back anytime. I try to post about at least 3 or 4 days in advance what I'm going to be talking about. Anytime a topic strikes your interest, just let me know. I'm more than happy to have you on. Or anyone listening, by the way, if you happen to feel very conversant on a subject that I post out that I'm going to be talking about, let me know. I'm open to having just about anyone as co-host. Samer, thank you very much. You're insightful and eloquent as always. As for me, Locked in the Guillotine will be back on Friday. I will be reviewing UFC 163, Clucky's latest bombshell, Jose Aldo's broken foot, all that fun stuff if you're into MMA. You can find me on the 411 Ground and Pound radio show every Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I will be back next week. I'm not quite sure what my topic is. I want to kind of dovetail off of animals somewhat, so I might do anthropomorphic animals. I might do Disney animal villains, although I could do that. Disney villains is a separate podcast. I'll come up with something before next week, and I hope to have you all back then. Until then, remember, ladies and gentlemen, bad guys make the good guys seem better. So good night, and hear from Scarface.
So say good night to the bad guy.